Welcome to our block of the month for 2023. This is the February block. You can make a 10-inch finished block or a 5-inch finished block. The pattern is at the end of the video, but for now, it's time to cut. For this block, you will need a light fabric, an accent fabric, and a dark fabric. From a light fabric, cut one square that is 6 inches by 6 inches. Bisect it corner to corner for 2 triangles. You will only need one of the triangles for this block, but you can save the other one for a future block. Next, we need to cut 4 rectangles that measure 3 inches by 5.5 inches. When cutting fabric for any kind of pattern, it's a good idea to start with the biggest pieces first, because then if you make a mistake, you can always cut smaller pieces out of the miscut. You also need one square that is 3 inches by 3 inches. While I'm cutting out the pieces for my 10-inch finished square, I'm also going to be cutting pieces for my 5-inch finished square. From the accent fabric, you need to cut 2 squares that measure 3 inches by 3 inches. From the dark fabric, you need to cut 6 squares that measure 3 inches by 3 inches. I'm going to cut 3 strips that are 3 inches wide and then cut 2 squares from each of these strips. When cutting, it's important to start with a straight edge so that you know your pieces are true to size. From the dark fabric, you also need to cut one square that is 3 3/8 by 3 3/8. Bisect it once, corner to corner, for 2 triangles. I have the 10-inch size and the 5-inch size both cut, and I've got them separated by size in this cute little tray. It's time to head to the sewing machine. Use 1/4-inch seam allowances unless otherwise instructed. With right sides together, place 2 dark squares on the ends of 2 light rectangles. You can either draw a line corner to corner on the wrong side of the dark squares, or you can use your diagonal seam tape to help you sew corner to corner. You just start in the corner on one side and use the other side to follow that red line that goes down the middle of the diagonal seam tape. Once you've sewn the line, you can trim the seam to a 1/4 inch and throw away those triangles, or you could sew a line 1/2 inch away from the first line and then cut in between the 2 sewn lines to get a spare 1/2 square triangle unit that you can use in another project. For the 5-inch blocks, I'm just going to trim that seam down to a 1/4 inch and throw away those little tiny triangles. Those are just too small for me to worry about. I'm not going to save those. Press towards the dark fabric, and then we're going to repeat this process we just did with the other half on the other side of this rectangle to make a flying geese unit. If you are joining us on this block of the month journey for 2023, let us know what colorway you're using in the comment section below. And while you're there, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Press this to the dark and then set these aside. It's time to work on the 4-patch unit. These flying geese units should measure 3 inches by 5.5 inches. Piece the remaining dark fabric squares to the accent squares. Press towards the dark fabric, and then it's time to sew them together to make the forepatch. The forepatch should measure 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches. I'm going to press this seam to one side, but you could also press it open if you prefer. Piece the dark triangles onto the ends of the remaining 2 light rectangles. Make sure that they each point a different direction. You don't want them to be the same. You want them to be mirror images of each other. The triangles will form the base of the basket. Press towards the dark triangles. Now all our pieces are done and we can start assembling the block. Piece the remaining light square to one of the flying geese units and press towards the square. Piece the remaining flying geese unit to the forepatch unit and press towards the forepatch unit. Make sure that you lay it out as shown. The accent fabric will be going up and down the center of the block. Make sure to lay it out as shown. The flying geese unit should be pointing into the block. Once pressed, it'll be time to piece the base units to adjacent sides of the square. I did use some pins for this section to make sure that the seams didn't shift as I sewed the pieces together. Not everyone likes to use pins, but I find that my accuracy improves if I do a little bit of pinning in the right spots. Once I have the first side added, I'm just going to do a quick little finger press so that I can add the other side before I go to the ironing board. You'll want to press towards the pieces that you just added. Now there's just one seam left. You can trim these little dog ears either before you sew or after you sew. Piece the light triangle to the corner, centering it as best you can, and then press towards the triangle. Once pressed, you can trim this to 10.5 inches by 10.5 inches as necessary. I made the 10-inch blocks and the 5-inch blocks in all 3 of my colorways. This is the 30s colorway, and I have the red and white colorway, and finally the Christmas colorway. Make sure to put your blocks, leftover fabric, and pieces into their project bag, and we will add block number 3 next month. A downloadable version of this pattern may be found in the Files section of our Facebook group called The Quilted Forest Friends, or you can push pause and take notes, or screenshot it to print at home. We hope that you remember to hit that like button, leave us a comment, share with your quilting friends, and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!